Oh, so right, okay. There I was saying to you, Kate, I'm not very technical minded, and I'm just waiting for her to say now, start speaking. Right, let me start again. A very warm welcome from me, Jenifer, in Melton Mowbray in the county of Leicestershire. And I am so excited tonight to speak to Kate. I first came across Kate back 3 years ago when she was having a conversation with Thomas Sheridan. And I can't believe that I've actually got to speak to Thomas myself. And then for some, I can't explain the reason why, but I just reached out to Kate and said, please, can I chat to you? So obviously on a soul level or deep level, I need to talk to you about things. I think one of the things that drew me to you very much so was about your investigations into the Fae and also the paranormal, because I've always worked with fairy cards for the since 2009, but lately the fairies have been turning up. Like every time I turn fairies, it's about fairy books, fairy things, and because my granddaughter Elsie was born on the 1st of May, I then dedicated a bit of the garden to a fairy garden to little Elsie. So that's my reason why I asked you to come on board. So Kate, please introduce yourself.
Oh, thank you very much for having me along. I'm sure it's going to be a really interesting chat both ways. I'm Kate Ray. I jack of all trades, master of none, I think is a good way of putting it. I'm a paranormal investigator. I research and I also write on the subject. So I write for Haunted magazine regularly. That comes out 4 times a year. And I know that our mutual friend Thomas Sheridan, he really enjoys the magazine, which is that's heartwarming for me that such a great as Thomas has a hand in with reading that. I found myself as an accidental author, and I'll chat about that in a bit. I'm a craftsperson. I literally I have to have lots of things on the go. I can't just stick to one channel of working or one channel of doing things. In fact, it may look quite tidy and neat behind me, but let me tell you, this side of the screen, I've got everything pushed back on my desk right now. So yeah, it's a little chaotic, but I like it like that.
Yeah, if you could see my table, I've got singing bowls, crystals, I've got my artwork, I've got koshiki chimes and candles. It's yeah, I'm very much like you. So also because I came back off holiday and I found that this little crisscross in the garden, and I reached out to you and said, oh, what do you think this means? You are into the rune and also into the tarot, is that correct?
Tarot, definitely. So runes, not really my thing.
All right.
I was never majorly drawn to working with the runes, but I noticed that there was a particular pattern that was laid out. You said it was near your Faery Garden.
That's
Uh,
correct.
yeah, and I instantly knew it as a kind of it was definitely a rune for me, how it was laid out. And it was about, I think it was about joy, wasn't it, and sort of
Yes.
being in the moment. And yeah, it was I liked that because runes can often be quite introspective and dark, so to have that kind of really nice light one was quite a nice thing for you to have there.
Yeah, like because I mean you don't know my history, but I was a therapist at Ragdale Hall in Melton Mowbray, and I can't believe we're neighbours. You're in Nottingham and I'm in Leicestershire, and up until 2020, I never thought I'd ever leave Ragdale. So the last 3 years for me, it's been quite a journey of like finding my feet and everything, and then because of the fairy, the world has come into my life big time. To see that sign and to hear your message, I thought I know I'm being guided along a path, and that was just confirmation to me. But I'm really interested in the paranormal, and like I was thinking today, like my first question was going to be for you, and actually it's written here. What is this reality that we live on?
Oh, good
Because
grief! How long have we got? Seriously, I think in a nutshell for me, it's we are the anomaly within the universe because we're a deep density of matter, and we live amongst a lot of other things that haven't got this dense matter. So we're the kind of odd ones out, I think, because we live in a material existence, and there is a plethora of things that are on a plane of a non-material existence. And as beings, we are incredibly limited, and I think there's a reason why we're limited. We're limited in our senses capabilities. We know that we see a very small section of the light spectrum. Our hearing is not, there are animals out there who've got incredible hearing in comparison to ours, and they don't even hear on the full spectrum. Our senses of touch and taste and smell are ultimately very, very limited. And, that is with reason. I think we have to learn other lessons within this density that we live in. Yeah, I think that's in a nutshell. I mean, we could go all over the place with that particular question, couldn't we?
We could indeed, we could, because when I was growing up, excuse me, when I was growing up, I lived in a little cottage, not cottage, in the little village called Chedworth in Gloucestershire, and to me, magic was all around me. To me, it was like laying underneath the beech trees, listening to the wind. I could hear the wind speak to me, and I just so believed in the unseen world. But then, like, I think as children we do,
Yeah.
and then as adults we kind of like go to school and it's drummed out of us the true reality. So and I always remember being told there was fairies at the end of the garden. So what's your connection with the fairies? Because I know in England they're called the fae, aren't they?
I call them the fae, or I'll call them fairy, spelt with an E.
Yeah.
And both my co-host Dr. Neil Rushton, and I, we discuss it quite a lot, the terminology of fairies. And for me, fairy, spelt with an I, is the sylphs, so the winged creatures that are in that realm. And fairy, spelt with an E, or saying fae, overspans a huge amount of different energies and entities. And it does touch on things like cryptozoology, touches on the angelics, it touches on the demonics. So it's this full raft of beings really that come under the coverall of fae. And I think for me as well, saying fae or fairy with an E, when we spell fairy with an I, people have a preconceived idea about what fairies are. So flower fairies or Tinkerbell and that kind of thing. Whereas these things are as diverse as our animal kingdom and beyond, that there is such diversity that they're not always equating to, beautiful beings that will grant you wishes. I mean, that's very rare. We know that's very rare, not only from folklore, but also from recent modern encounters. Those beautiful encounters are usually tarnished quite a lot with things that aren't quite right or surreal or can be quite creepy. So I have come across a raft of people. I mean, I love that people want to tell me their fairy encounters, and I do find it fascinating how many people have these encounters and how many people say the same thing. It changed my life. I had this encounter and it just changed my life completely. So the fairy thing for me, like yourself, I as a child, I grew up totally understanding that we are in an energetic world, but we are, like I've said, the anomaly within that energetic world. And I knew that there was more to it. Obviously, you can't really verbalize that when you're a child. And it never left me. It always kind of was a hum underneath, right the way through my life. I disconnected a little bit, I think, in my early 20s, but sort of got back into looking at it, and it kind of niggles at you, doesn't it? It kind of niggles until you go back. It's like going back home. It'll niggle at you until you do it. And so fairies were always my kind of first port of call. And the more attached to nature and the more animistic characters, as opposed to I was never a bubbles and unicorn kind of person growing up, but I always knew that these things were on the periphery of life. And then in recent years, it's kind of buttered up with my work in the paranormal in a big way. And that's took me on a completely different journey with the fairies, and how I feel like I work for them. I don't feel like I work with them. I feel like I work for them. And I'm some kind of, I don't know, I was trying to think of a word the other day, but I think ambassador is probably the nearest that I can get, and you do get a call in, and it doesn't stop until you go, okay, then what do you want me to do?
Yes, yeah, I agree with you because like the fairy garden that I've created for my little Elsie, I I'm not, I don't even want to, because I always remember Thomas saying about the fairies in Ireland, like, they were feared and so respected, and you don't just evoke anyone, so I don't. So to me, it's a little bit of magic in the garden. It's just a wee bit of like when I mean, Elsie's only like 2 months old now, but when she gets older, I'm just making this space like little flowers and nothing man-made, nothing, well, apart from the actual house that is man-made, it's made of stone. But to me, it's just giving them a little bit of space in my garden and a little bit of space for Elsie. But I have no desires or inkling to like suddenly start trying to talk to them, because like, why would they want to talk to me anyway? But what I have noticed when I'm doing my art, like today, I spent a good hour doing my artwork, and it was almost like not what I wanted to draw, but it was something that was coming through me. Does that make sense, Kate?
Total sense, absolutely total sense. I think when you can talk to craftspeople, writers, poets, artists, and they will always say the same, that their best work doesn't come from them. It's almost like you're outside of yourself and you're being channeled through. It's an amazing process. We used to call it in ancient, in the ancient world, we used to say it was our muses. So it was the muses that would give us these gifts and these talents. But I do think that the fairies do channel themselves through people in different ways, and I think that that's their shared love with humans is the creativity. They love creativity. And I mean, you're right with the fairy garden. I often say to people when they say, I want to build an altar in my house to the fairies, and I do say you have to have a very specific intention about why you're doing that, because you don't know what you're inviting in. And if you're inviting things in and you're not giving boundaries about what you want and what kind of relationship you want, you can open yourself up to a whole raft of trouble. It's we I think in England we kind of we have lost a raft of respect for the fairies. I mean, down in Devon and Cornwall, there's still that undertone, where, as with the island and Scotland, but the majority of England, we do think it's a childish thing. It's a childish folly, and it's certainly not. It's certainly not something to be played with.
Yeah, that's because I always remember Thomas saying like, the fairies are being portrayed as little Tinkerbells, like light and dust, and they're not. And then I also like feel like, why should we? I feel like we should take care of nature. We should take care of the garden. We should take care, because that's their land, and we should respect them. Hence, like, I've just made the space, and but every time I think about, no, every time in that space, every time I'm either drawing art or writing something about the fairies, there's something in me that completely changes. I just feel this warmth,
Mm.
not in a like a uh, what's rainbow warmth,
Yeah.
but a grounded warmth where I feel like I've come back home. Because I always remember dreaming when I was little of like going through the hedgerows to another world.
Mhm.
And when I went into the other world, I felt my happiest. And that's a dream that I always had as a child. But yeah, I really highly recommend everyone, and I am going to put links to your YouTube channel because you what's your co-host called again?
Neil Rushton.
Neil Rushton. So you and Neil talk about it intensely, and you recommend books, and you recommend so much. So I think everyone like who's interested in the fae and the fairies to head over to your YouTube channel and find
Thank
out more,
you.
which I will be doing as well. Um, so the paranormal. I keep saying that wrong actually. One of the things like what I was because the whole quest of my journey of like interviewing people is that I got caught up in the new age bubble and I was just like, gosh, it would have been back when my daughter was 3 years old, so she's now 29, so a long time ago. And I got caught up in that. And then I was like thinking, well, what is the truth? Hence my
Mhm.
conversation with Thomas. And we've really got to be careful because I don't know what you feel about it, but Thomas was saying, and also another guy I listened to, Tony Sayers, about when you start to link into spirit guides and link into, and Thomas was talking about it with Reiki as well, because you just don't know what you're linking into. And which has brought me to the conversation with you because you must go to places and sense energy and souls that are kind of like lost. Is that the right way to describe it, what you do?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very fortunate, if you can call it fortunate, with the job that I do, because it's not just the spirits of the dead. I'm off straight off the bat. I'm going to put this out there. I am a rubbish medium. Um, I, I'm not particularly fond of talking to the dead. I'm not particularly fond of them talking to me. Um, but what I do is I pick up on other energies, usually psychic energies from the land, from a property, from people who were there, or from other beings. And you're right. In a nutshell, I'm definitely on the same page as Thomas in the fact that once you start opening yourself up, this is where people, I think, start to run into problems, because once you start getting into this kind of work, when you're working on that astral plane, whatever it be, the non-material plane, um, people go into it with good intentions, they go into it with an open heart, and people don't realize that whatever you're seeking, there is a raft of things seeking you. So you literally turn yourself on like a light bulb, in these spaces, and you become very attractive. And you have to be very careful about the creatures and the people and the energies that you come across and that you meet on these astral levels. They're not always there for your best intentions, and some of the strongest energies are those who are there to take your energy or to do you some, spiritual misfortune. So, and I think learning that lesson is important, as important as somebody sat there saying, you have to be careful in these realms. And I think the people who do talk about it in terms of it is quite a dangerous game are
Mm.
those people who have come across these energies and these entities. One of my YouTube um, things that I did was a couple of years ago at Christmas, and I spoke to Thomas about it. I've come across a raft of paranormal activity. Being a paranormal investigator, I go out searching for ghosts. Ghosts end up searching for you. And that's how it goes. But one particular Christmas, I had an entity in my room that interacted with me in a way that made me incredibly uncomfortable. And I have to remind myself that if I'm going to step into their realm, I've got to expect them to step back into my realm. I'm going out, and when I'm going out doing paranormal investigation, whether it's private or whether it's events, You know, this is not the kind of spirits like the spirit of your grandma who wants to come back and just check on you. These are spirits that, excuse me, that make themselves known in an uncomfortable way for whatever reason that they're actually doing that. So yeah, you have to be, you have to understand how to safeguard yourself the best you can. And it's the same with shamanic work, like say Reiki. Even if you think you just sat around in a drumming circle or whatever else, if you're taking yourself into that meditative state that's going to go into those astral planes, it's not it's not it cannot be always a happy, joyful place. You know, we know from ancient shamans that they would go through quests to find different ancestors, and they would go through the mill, literally sort of through the mill on a spiritual level, while they're trying to find out answers for communities and stuff. It wasn't a quest for everybody. It was a quest for those who were equipped spiritually to be able to do it and resolve it. So yeah, in a roundabout way, I agree with Thomas.
Yes, but you know, like I did go down the path and of wanting to be a medium, and I think I have such a strong like, and that's the other thing I wanted to talk to you about is our daemons, a strong protection, because you know, like I couldn't, because I do the card readings, I could never just attack. I never worked with spirit guide. I always read these books where they go, the spirit guide appeared, but to me they never appeared. So I must have had a strong protection around me, like just do not go in that area. And I've heard someone else say, like, when you start to train as a medium, you're making your light stronger and then you attract them. And I thought that's exactly what you've just said, but you're attracting them for the wrong thing. And a lot of people said to me, like, if you say a prayer of protection, of love, that protects you. But I just don't sit even comfortable with that now after listening to Tony, to Thomas. Like, they are, you know, even like when you have these near death life experiences where you die and then you go to the light. They're tricksters, you know. They shower you with love and you go to the light, and then they show you all the things you've done wrong, and you feel so guilt tripped you come back around again to live again. So you just got to be. And what I've loved about, you mentioned animism, is like how just being connected. And another lady I speak to, Ola, she talks about like you go inwards, you don't meditate outwards, you go inwards into our caves. Does that sit with you as well, what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, meditation can come on many different levels. You know, just I often have people who talk to me and say, I can't meditate. And I ask them why, and everybody has the same answer. They say, I can't quieten my mind. And I'll say it's not about quietening your mind, it's about focusing. And there's a big difference. Having no thoughts isn't meditation. Having no thoughts is, you know, that is the ultimate goal. You know, you go and live in a cave for 9 years and you don't have a thought in your head. But for me, meditation. But if you're meditating to go onto those astral levels and those planes, that is it within you anyway. That is part of you. You know, it's I mean, we could get into the complexities of we are the universe and the universe is us. You know, it's there is no, we are seamless. So but in terms of protecting yourself, I definitely agree with you. I have, over the years, especially when I first became a paranormal investigator, I was absolutely I ritualized my protection. And I made sure that every property that I came out, I was smudging myself, I was having salt baths, you know, I was saying prayers, pagan prayers going in and coming out, and wearing obsidian and different oils. And now I don't do any of that. I have learned, and this is for me, it's not for everybody. I have learned that actually having faith in yourself and raising your own vibration on a daily level, you know, keeping yourself buoyant, is as bigger amount of protection that I personally need. I mean, there is times when I will come across something and it shakes me, but I have a raft of people around me who are really good, who I can talk it through. And I'll go, oh yeah, I need to do that. I need to, raise the vibrational property in the house that I'm living in. I need to do this and that, but I don't do what I used to do. And I'll give you an example of how that doesn't work in your favour. So I do events. I go out on ghost hunting events as part of a team. And we'd gone to one particular location that we'd investigated several times before. So we had a group of paying guests. And the first vigil that I did, so I'm a lead investigator, I take my own group, was in the basement of the property. And I'd had some really nerve-wracking experiences in the basement of the property, and was very aware of a dark energy. And I said to the group that I was in, would you like us to do a group protection? And they said, yeah, we would. So I lock-stocked this protection. I was getting them to bubble up, light, make sure that you hunkered down, whatever. My group, we did 3 different areas of vigils. We got nothing all night, no activity whatsoever. Everybody else who was in that building were like, you've got to listen to this EVP, and somebody's taken a photo and there's a possibility, and somebody else has seen something or heard something, or this has moved. Nothing. We got nothing. So it was like I'd shut everybody down in this protective bubble, and then
Nothing.
we had a quiet night.
So do you get called to a lot of places then?
In terms of private investigation, we don't do a lot, and the reason for that is so my boss, who's a very good friend of mine, he is a presenter on TV, and we have to be very careful about what private investigations that we take on, because obviously a lot of people are very drawn to him because they see him on television. The ones that we have done have been absolutely fascinating. Prior to that, I did do quite a few residential. I was with a much smaller team. But in terms of, we tend to go out to known haunted locations on the event side of it. So we do the Ancient Ram Inn, which is reportedly, amongst many, the most haunted pub in Britain, or the oldest pub in Britain, which there's lots that lay claim to that, but it is particularly active. So we have the privilege of going to these incredible places to do events, and we also get the privilege of having a good couple of hours to investigate ourselves in these properties before our guests turn up. So we'll often go around and do team investigations of a property before guests turn up. So yeah, it's good. It's very interesting. It's very interesting.
Oh, you're brave. I'd be
I don't know whether brave or stupid.
If I like, because like sometimes like I see something out the corner of my eye and it's in broad daylight, and I'm like, that's okay, I can deal with that. But if it's in an old place and it's dark and I feel something, because as a child, I was very sensitive to energies of buildings, I must admit. But like now, if I was in your shoes, I'd be like, oh no. So what causes these? Is the energy, isn't it, impregnated what had happened in that building, that the energy still remains, isn't it? Is that the best way to describe it?
That's one aspect. So one aspect is that particular aspect is, it's kind of got the title of the stone tape theory, where a property will hold on to a memory and kind of replay it and repeat it.
Yeah.
So that's one aspect. There's another aspect of visitation. So that could be, like your grandma coming and saying everything's okay and I'm here, and so you get that. You get some souls that are stuck within a purgatory realm. So the sandwich between not being able to move on and recycle and not being able to leave the material realm, and that can be for a raft of reasons. Now, this is where for me it gets interesting. So I am particularly drawn to things like the psychic energy of a building itself. So the energy that comes off the land that it lays on, the energy that's imbued into a building for whatever purpose it's been used for. But where my crossover comes from with the paranormal and the fairies, I have found over the years that where you get hauntings, you often get fairy. You often get these other energies that interplay with the haunting and add to the raft of things that go off in a haunting environment. Now, when I first started talking to my colleagues, my paranormal colleagues about this, it was difficult. You know, I excuse my French, but they did take the piss out of me. Because I was when I was learning mediumship work, because we have this time before any of the guests turn up in a property. If it was a new property, I would tell people, don't tell me anything about the history of the property, and I'd go around and I would test myself on the mediumship skill level, and I could get much of a muchness from it. I could get the energies, much of a muchness. But I started coming across these creatures, these things, these entities that weren't human, that weren't demonic, and they were giving me information about the things that they were doing in the property. And I would relay that back to, to whoever was housekeeping that property, and they'd say, oh yeah, that happens quite frequently. So I was getting confirmation that fairies were there. And the very first time I told one of my colleagues, and I said, there's something here and it's not human. Of course, he jumped to the conclusion, oh, it's dark demonic. And I said, no, it's not. And I explained what I was seeing. And he was like, you're absolutely insane. that was the kind of response. Now, over the years, because I've been able to have things verified and on a regular basis verified, that my colleagues within that group have definitely turned a corner, have come round to it's a thing. And I also now for probably the last 4 years have been going out and talking to other paranormal groups at conferences, etc., about fairies being a part of the haunting experience. And you don't deal with them in the same way that you deal with a dad at all. They've got no aversion to sage. They've got no aversion to the Lord's Prayer, although historically we're told that they haven't. They're not all the raft of kit that we take out with us to cleanse a property or to help somebody out. The fairies think it's hilarious. They do. They think it's like, what on earth, this paraphernalia you've got? What's this meant to do? So it's a very different way with working with the fairies.
Right, I've got a question I have. So how do the fairies see us?
I think the majority of the time they one of the favorite things that they do, and this is across the board, and this is definitely from research, as well as kind of gut instinct as well. So across the board, one of their favorite things to do is to mimic us. They think our ways and our values and our morals and what we do and how we work and what we do for play and things like that, think it's hilarious. They do think it's hilarious. They cannot fathom why we are so sort of squashed in into by our culture and our and our world that we're in. And so I think I don't think they pity us. I think that there is an element of envy because we are continuously material. I think there's that element to it. I know that Thomas has talked about, he spoke to me about fairyland not being as beautiful as our material plane. and that there is a jealousy of that. But I kind of often think that they see us as klutzy and a bit clunky and a bit comical. And I think if we get mad or upset, they're just like, what's going on? You know, they don't understand our constraints. And I think the freer we are, and the more we learn to let go, the more I think that they find us easier to interact with. When you hear people who've had fairy experiences, they're usually in, and my co-host loves this term, in this kind of liminal space, sort of, you know, not quite conscious. We're not really thinking about anything too much or focusing. We're just on a different level, and that's usually where people will have experiences with fairies, you know, interact with them on a physical level.
Yes, because when I was listening to your last video, the census you were talking about, and you both read out a story about how, like, you go, this one guy was like just bunking off school, and it really stuck in my mind, this story, and I know that wasn't yours. He bunked off school, he went off to this field, and then like he was like with his art book, and he went into that state of you know, I call it way with fairies because I go away with the fairies. And then he saw orchids, an orchard, didn't he? And
Yeah.
there was apples, and he could hear music. And and then also in the book, I read Philip Pullman's book called The Dust.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a fairy encounter where the two end up going to this enchanted isle, and this fairy, and they like to entice people to eat. And that's what they all say, what I've read so far: do not eat anything from the fairyland, because you can get trapped into that land forever. That's correct, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, the folklore does talk about, it's I think it's more, it's less on the malevolent side and more on the time side of things. So if you partake in food or drink from fairyland, for what seems like an hour in fairyland can be 100 years in our time. So their time does not work in the same way that our time works. And so there are, you know, folklore stories about people who are dancing with the fairies, they're drinking fairy wine, and they wake up the next day, they're back in the glen that they without the fairies, you know, they're outside of fairy world, and they find that everybody that they know is long dead. You know, they come back into this reality, which it's interesting. I mean, this is where there's lots of different crossovers. So there are lots of motifs within in that kind of thing within the fairy, as there are with alien abduction. So, you know, there's time slips and time missing, and you know, people who have been wary about eating food from aliens, you know, just in the way that, you know, history past, that we were very cautious about eating food from the Fae. So there are lots of crossover motifs, not only in the paranormal haunting, but in alien cryptozoology. It just kind of, for me, spans the whole of that. You know, there are, it connects everything. I don't know whether I don't know whether I said on that last podcast, but one of the things that I'm really quite fixated on at the minute is the Isle of Man. They use the word spook as an overarching term for anything like that. So whether it be ghost, fairy, alien, cryptid, they use the word spook, and they don't compartmentalize these different categories. They're all under one, living under one roof, and it's just a phenomena that we haven't been able to understand fully. So we have to put it in compartments. And I think, I mean, coming back around to the paranormal thing, I think I felt this year, I did a conference that I've been doing for 3 years. I did a conference a couple of weekends back, and I felt like we were really on the cusp of a turning point. with people starting to go, yeah, there are major connections. It's not just ghosts. You know, there are all kinds of different theories sort of coming into to being a paranormal investigator that we need to start looking at, which is great because I think that's what my role has been.
So it just goes to proof that, like, I, you know, I also call this work where we live the realm. You know, I feel
Yes.
like we're living on a realm, and it, and again, going back to Ola, she said about in the beginning, this realm was very much like Avatar. We were the blue people, and the humans were the ones that invaded. So this was quite a magical land. And listening to you talk and listening to you tonight, you know, it's really is becoming evident to me that this realm that we live on, I do feel like there is a matrix over us where we are being hidden from the magic that's always been here. And it is a very enchanting place, isn't it? But not enchanting in Disneyland terms, but enchanting in there's many layers to this realm that we live on that we're not, which was the start of a conversation, was it? It is a very multi-dimensional magical realm where we live alongside other people, because Ola speaks also about like the underworld and this
Yes.
world that we live in, and then also you're not drinking your herbal tea.
No, I didn't. It's too hot.
I do listen to your podcast, I really do. So that is really kind of like, and one of the missions that I feel I'm on to is just reconnecting to the magic of the land.
I think it's been I mean, one of the good things, one of the few good things that came out of COVID and the lockdowns was that everybody seemed to crave that magic again. You know, I spoke about it before. It's like the woodlands that I was going to. All of a sudden, people were putting fairy doors in woodlands and tying ribbons to trees, and it was almost an instinctual thing. It was everyday people, but we were all craving. We wanted that wonder back, and you know, people were going into woods and they were walking in parks and probably, you know, not having the time to be able to do that and absorb themselves in that. So um, going back to what you were saying about the Matrix and it being overlaid so to stop us, you know, I truly do believe, and we could talk for hours about this. I truly do believe that we have had that's our biggest disabler, that we've had our understanding of magic taken away from us. We do not know, and we're not allowed to know how utterly powerful we are as individual people. And we are kept constrained, and we are actually being, oh, this is going to sound really woo woo, but we are being literally, that magic is being channeled out of us for purpose, for nefarious purposes. And we can take that right the way back, you know, organized religion, organized politics, etc. It's you know, it's, for me, it's all there to do that, to take that away from us, with, you know, without getting too deep and dark on on the subject. But I think the fear for those who are in control is that we all go, shit, we really are that powerful. We really are. We have capabilities that we just could not even imagine. And we do, all of us do.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think looking back on the last 3 years, it kind of like backfired on them what they thought was going to happen. They never expected people to be so okay, well, you know, there was me. I was clinging to Ragdale Hall, going, no, I want to work, I want to work. But I was the person that, you know, and hands up, I went, took my dog for a walk for about 3 hours a day and thought, God, this, you know, I was out in nature because,
Yeah.
you know, vitamin D, sunshine, good food, and, you know, like walk your dog, exercise. That's the tonic for good health.
Mm-hmm.
But I like you, I agree with you that, like, those of us who then suddenly started to reconnect to the land, it's been a massive wake-up call. It's been like, hang on a minute, And so how, you know, like when I was listening to you talk, I don't know if you noticed, but I was like, yes, 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 you're right. We are powerful, we are amazing beings, and the magic has been channeled. And I agree with you with religion. And then when religion started to fade off, the New Age movement came in, and then it's the same old storyline as a religion. And I was taught past life regression with Maria Wheatley, and she back in 2018, and she was the one that's kind of like press that button on, like where she was said like about the New Age, you know, and everything. So, oh God, my menopause brain, I've gone off on a tangent. And I'm like,
I love tangents. I love tangents.
where was I going with this conversation? How come how do you feel we can get back that magic? Because the magic's, I think it's always been there, but we've been cut off from the land, cut off from, you know, the feminine energy, and, you know, the magic of the stones, the magic of the land. How how can we get back? How can we reclaim our who we truly are?
I think it's baby steps. I think it's there for the grasping, but I don't think we understand the magnitude of it. And actually embracing it all in once would probably, you know, spontaneously combust, you know, we poof, we go up like a candle. And I think that we have to remind ourselves as well that we are material beings and we're having a material experience. So, you know, it's balancing that up. I tell you one. I mean, I struggle with it. You know, I'm the first to say I do struggle with connecting. I try to get out into the woods every other day, if not every day, and I know that I've got myself into a routine of I get onto the threshold of the woods and I say, you know, I am here. I am not in my headspace. I am here, and which is easier said than done. So a trick that I learned, and it's something that I've heard in different contexts, is I have to name plants and flowers as I'm going. So I'll have to say, okay, that's a bramble, that's a nettle, you know, that's ivy, that's an oak tree. And as I'm going, I'm kind of naming, and as I'm naming, you are appreciating a form and you are absorbing yourself for a moment in a form of nature. So you become enveloped with the experience. And I think that we kind of, I mean, you know, I go into the woods and go, come on then, heal me.
Yeah,
Come on, you know, my head's a clutter, heal me. But
yeah.
actually what I should be doing is saying, how can we have a relationship? And I think that that's the key. It's, you know, stepping into these spaces and saying, what is it that I can give that you can give back? You know, it's that symbiotic nature of things, isn't it? Where
Yeah.
we do live symbiotically, and we, you know, we're so fast paced. We get our food quickly, we get water quickly. You know, we don't think, you know, when you turn on the tap, you don't think how incredibly amazing it is to have water, you know, and to appreciate that and it's getting back to those kind of things. And I mean, again, I know it sounds really hippie, but take your shoes off, you know, even just a couple of minutes barefooting outside and just feeling the different temperatures. And it's bringing yourself out of here that's chaotic, and bringing yourself into the environment, and understanding yourself in that environment.
Yeah, that's what, yeah. Again, I speak about from Ola. She was saying like we've been so much into our head and so much into our third eye and so much into this space. We need to come back down into our hearts, into our womb, and like barefoot on the ground, and a connection, and that connection to the underworld and the cosmic world, which is the ether, the air. It's been cut off, but with the return of the Aquarian age, which is happening right now, the original birth and codes are coming back. One other thing I'd like to speak to you about. I was saying to Thomas about how like I always realized I was being protected, and but obviously it's not my spirit guide. And he said in that Irish accent, the way he goes, "It's your demon." And I
Yes.
went, and I was like, and then I listened to a video with, because Thomas recommended the book. Oh gosh, it's upstairs. It is, and I can't think of the author's name.
Is it the
But
Anthony Peaks?
yes,
Yes.
that's it. And I watched a video, and this man was talking a lot, and it went over my head because when people start talking about in their head, I'm like, you lose me. When I listen to you, I'm like, yeah, I get that. Um, but he was saying like with the deja vu, which it's because and I've also seen the hashtag we are the ghosts.
Mhm,
He was saying, what's to say that we're not reliving the life that we've previously lived?
mhm.
And that's why we get the deja vu. That's why our daemon's protecting us because it knows the path ahead and our intuition. And I, it blew me away. Blew me away. What's your thoughts on our daemons?
I think that the how I simplified it to have a starting point with it, because it is very, very complex, and
Yeah,
it's something that it's very hard for people to hear that word, not hear demon,
yeah,
which is where it went. So understanding it, even when you start understanding it, there's still that kind of inherent crackle that you get when you hear that word. So how I simplified it for myself is that we have up on the spiritual grid, we have our higher self that's part of a spiritual grid that's all connected. Everybody's higher selves are connected. And we are literally the avatar for our daemon. And we are playing out scenarios and situations, relationships, whatever, that help our daemon learn on another level. So we are. It's either. So I see human beings as spirit and soul. So when we are alive and living, I say that we have a soul when we're here, and that soul then can get recycled into another avatar. But our spirit is our ultimate higher self, basically. And they are there to present to you things in a way that you will understand them, to help you learn and to help them learn. But we're not disconnected, it sounds like. But that's how I had to get my head round because it's such a big, incredibly complex um, notion to understand and to get your head around. That's how I simplify. I have to simplify things as a starting point to then move on from. I find it difficult to try and absorb the big picture and then pick it apart. I start little and grow
yeah.
out. So
What was it like interviewing Anthony? Because I listened just a few minutes to the conversation and I was like, gosh, that was
I,
deep.
you know what, I when I am intently listening to somebody, I cannot remember that conversation at all. The thing is, I remember we were actually speaking offline after that interview for way over an hour. I have temporal lobe epilepsy, and it was something that he was
Oh,
very interested in. So we were having a conversation about, we kind of expanded it out, and I said, I totally understand about the deja vu thing. I could literally tell people what was going to happen bit by bit within seconds of it then happening and occurring as I'd explained it. So we had this huge conversation after, which I remember a lot clearer than the interview, because everybody I interviewed just like poof, honestly blows my mind. I know I say that on every one of my interviews, but literally everybody who comes on, I'm like, I want to be reeling for weeks, having this conversation. That's the kind of person, but an incredibly, incredibly intelligent man. And yeah, it was seriously mind blowing interviewing him. It was seriously good.
wow. And then can we just to wrap this conversation up, can we talk about your book, please?
Of course, yes, definitely. So I'll give you the view of the front. So this is the second edition. So it's Woolly Snots, Curious Case of the Wollerton Gnomes. So um, going right back to when we first started talking, and you were saying about your artwork and feeling as though you were being channeled. I often joke that I was used by the gnomes to write this book. It was an incredible experience. So in a nutshell, I was asked by Dr. Simon Young, who is the head of the Faery Investigation Society, to contribute to a book, The Woollerton Gnomes,
Oh yeah.
a Nottinghamshire fairy mystery. So I'm one of the essay contributors to that particular book. I knew about the case of the Woollerton Gnomes. I'd come across it, I think, in my very early teens, reading 14 times. And I remember it being the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard in my life, and kind of put it to the back of my mind. I just thought that's so stupid. I don't even want to look at it. And I looked at it again in my late 20s, early 30s. And then I really got to grips with it when I was writing for Simon's book. And I realised how utterly incredible as a case it was, because it is one of the UK's most documented fairy experiences in history. It's definitely on par, if not surpassing, the Cottingley fairies with its information and how the information has been collated. So after writing that essay, I had sat down to continue writing quite a serious, if you like, serious book about the fairies, which I'm still doing, by the way. So I'm still in the midst of it, and doing lots of research for it. And I kept getting this niggle in the back of my mind, that the gnomes from the Woollerton Gnomes case wanted to tell their side of the story. They said, you heard what happened to the kids, now we want to say what happened to us, what our story is. And I remember distinctly messaging Neil Rushton and saying, I've got this book emerging, and he's an author, and quite an established author. And I said what it was about, and he said, oh, okay, yeah, I can. And he's very honest with me. He said, yeah, I can see that. I said, I've got a name for the title. I really don't like it, but it won't go away. And he said, what is it? And I said, it's the woolly snots. And he went, no. And I was like, I know, I hate it, but I can't drop it, So the woolly snots, basically the name, and I'm not going to give any spoilers to this, but woolly comes from Woollerton. So it was shortened down, and snots come from Nottingham used to be called Snottingham.
Ah.
So it's the basically the Woollerton Nottingham gnomes. So that's the woolly snots. So I sat down and I thought, all the questions that I had in my head about this case that made it ridiculous, that made it strange, that made it anomalous, I started asking those questions in my head. And I wrote the woolly snots in 7 days. Don't ask me. This is where I say the gnomes wrote the book through me. I was used. I sat down first thing in the morning. I'd get up in the morning, have a cup of tea. I hand wrote it. It was 38,000 words, 7 days, every single day. I could not get away from it. And every time I just thought, I've got no idea where this bit's going. What are we doing with this? I was being given answers. I was being given strong images of the next bit and the next bit and the next bit. The only thing that I consciously planned and I consciously contributed to was two aspects, really. One was the format of the chapters, and the other one was the name of the gnomes. So I said, I want you guys to have names that are related to the county. So all the gnomes have names that are connected to different areas in the county, because I wanted them to have that real strong, deep connection with Nottinghamshire, as well as just Nottingham as a city. And even stranger was how I got it published. This is how I know I was intervened. This isn't me being lucky. I was being intervened. I was having a conversation with a manager of a guest that I had on, and trying to arrange a date for the guest to come on the show. And we'd had a really lengthy conversation. We hit it off straight away. Absolutely lovely bloke. And at the end of it, he just offhand said, "Oh, so what are you doing with the rest of your day?" And I said, "I'm kind of obsessing over writing a book at the minute." And he said, "Oh, I'm a publisher. Would you like me to have a look?" And I was like, "What?" And
Wow.
it was just crazy. So Mark and Anna Jones, Anna's his wife, they took on the book. And when I first sent them the kind of overview of the book, they both went, "No, we're not doing fairy stories. We're not, it's not our kind of thing." And I said, hold on a minute, let me tell you. So I told them about it being a true story, and this was based on facts, and they were, and then they were like, "Now it's a game changer."
Wow.
And they coached me through my whole first experience. And I look back and I just think that wasn't me. I didn't go out and peddle it. I didn't push to write it. I didn't, you know, it wasn't me. I was gifted it, but I was also used. I was
Wow.
used by the gnomes.
So it's based on a true story, and it's really interesting because my friend lives in Wollington. There's Wollington Park, isn't there?
Yes,
This big park.
yes, yeah.
Yeah. And so we're neighbours. So like everyone that listens to me is mainly in Melton Mowbray.
Yeah.
What is in a nutshell, what is the story of the gnomes, and what is, so people go out and buy the book? Can you give me a little bit of the history?
So from the perspective of the encounter, there was an encounter in 1979. There was a group of school children from a local primary school that was near Woollerton Park that got into the park grounds after hours. It was in September, so it was just getting dusk. And they went into the park and they encountered 60 gnomes in 30 hovering cars. And you can imagine when you first come across that story, you're like, come on, what? They didn't just encounter one or two gnomes, but they had an encounter that from the look of it, looks like it lasted about 10 minutes, where they were being chased by the gnomes and they were almost playing a game of tag with them. So the gnomes were chasing them around in the cars. The kids were running and laughing. They were all playing. And then the following Monday, they went into school and their head teacher caught wind of what had happened. And he very intuitively sat down and interviewed them individually and got the interview on tape. It then pretty much exploded within the county. Newspapers got hold of it. It then exploded further afield. National newspapers got hold of it and ran stories on it. One of the fascinating things about it is because I'm part of a research body that has been looking at this now for coming up 3 years, where we are doing further research onto the people involved and the land and etc. We can't find the kids. We know the names of the children. We've put out appeals on radio. We've put out appeals on YouTube, in newspapers. We can't track any of them down. I've spoke to the head teacher, but we've not been able to track any of the children down, which makes it even more carrying on being sort of an extraordinary story. It sounds bizarre, but it's super interesting. And the gnome's perspective, although it's a book that's being cited as pitched, for children, I didn't write it for children. The gnomes wrote it to be heard. So it's majority adults that have bought it.
That's where I want you to stop with the book, because I want to buy the copy off of you, and people can buy it off Amazon or directly from you. So yeah, I'm definitely going to buy that book and hear the gnome story of the offence, of what happened. Okay, you know what? I could talk to you for absolutely hours. I really, really could, because you're such a fascinating person. But I think one of the burning questions before we go, I mean, I'd like to say, right, talk about your book. What was that point in your life where you found yourself doing the YouTube channel, when you found yourself doing the investigations, and you know, it is like listening to you talk tonight. This is your life. This is your world. This is what you get up each morning for.
Mhm.
When what was there a certain point? How did you get to where you are today now?
I think the answer to that is I think I've been building up to a certain point all my life. I'd always, I suppose, been on the alternative side of things from, 10, 11 years old. That I was very lucky that I found a tribe at a very young age that I felt comfortable in growing with. But the very point of it was that I reached a landmark birthday. And on that birthday, just prior to that birthday, I never really had a big celebration on a big birthday before. I'd always sort of let them, saunter past. And I said, I'm not doing it for this one. I want to mark it. And I was speaking to my brother about it, and he said, well, why don't you do something that frightens you? People do bungee jumping, they do, I don't know, flying a plane, or and we were racking our brains. I was thinking that nothing really excites me like that, nothing, and he said, well, what really frightens you? And I said, poltergeist. And he said, okay, then that's what you've got to do. And I was thinking, how do I go out and find a poltergeist? So I devised in a very short space of time a challenge for myself, which was 40, 40 and at 40. So I'd set myself a goal of having 40 14 experiences, so 40 paranormal experiences throughout my 40s, thinking it would just be, I'd go up to Loch Ness, I'd go to some stone circle, I'd go out on a couple of ghost hunts, and tick a load of the boxes under the 40 in banner. Literally, as I'd made that decision, the universe just went, all right, then you can have all this. And within probably about a month and a half, I was with a small paranormal group. That was I think that started in the June. By the August, I had been asked to join the paranormal group that I'm in now, which is Barry Guy's paranormal group. I found myself on radio. I found myself on telly. I found myself researching and writing. I found, it was just, I'd gone, yep, this is what I want. This is where I want to go with it. And the universe had gone, well, we're going to give it you with bells on. And it was just, and it's not stopped being amazing. It's not stopped, the opportunities that I'm given, and I'm very blessed to be able to go to different places and meet different people, and be creative as well as doing all the other stuff. It's just, I think it's all been building up until that point where I went, I accept this. This is what I'm meant to be doing.
Yes, that point in your life where you opened up that no, you gave that message to the universe quite clearly, didn't you?
Yes.
Well, this is what I want. And then like and then like all this building up to this point, like finally, like the dam, isn't it? The dam
Yes.
was broken, and all the stuff that was waiting for you all your life, so, then appeared, which is, it's leaning into your bliss. It's leaning into the thing that you truly like in your heart of hearts, what you truly would love to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
So did you do the painting behind you?
No, no, that's just a backdrop because it's actually just a wardrobe. That's not one of mine. No.
Ah,
I'm a reluctant painter. I'm a sculptor. I like building. I'm not a sculptor. I like building things and making things. I was in a previous incarnation in this life. I was a secondary school art teacher, but I was always I like working with my hands. So when I do sit down and do illustrations or do artwork, I don't find it the process that I do when I'm working with my hands. But I do enjoy it. I do enjoy painting and
I'm making toads. Could you go on?
toads. So yes, I do mushrooms. I've got about, I don't know, about 100 sat in front of me that are all being ready to be made into earrings and pendants. So
Wow. You are living your dream, aren't you?
totally, absolutely, and I'm very, very blessed that I'm very well supported. Um, you know, um, I've got a lot of really good people around me who I can do it without guilt. I can be me without guilt, which is really important. Even if you've just got one or two people around you that hold you up in that sense, then you are rich within yourself. So
Yeah. I don't know when you turn 40, but I do, listening to you talk, I do feel like 2020 was a major turning point for you, and you stepped fully more in your power, not just turning 40. So what made you choose the name for your YouTube channel, Hare and the Hawthorn?
oh wow, okay. So very, very quickly, I had the absolute pleasure of going to Brian and Wendy Froud's house. So Brian and Wendy Froud are literally the fairy king and queen. So Brian does the beautiful artwork, the fairy artwork. They both worked on the Labyrinth film and Dark Crystal film. And I've been a couple of times, but the first time was to do a workshop. There was only 6 of us who were invited, and totally blessed by being there. And Wendy, bless her, she couldn't put Kate as a name to me. When you see somebody, you just think that doesn't sound right. And I was in this workshop, I was building a hare, sort of a hare fairy, sort of animistic creature. So she started calling me Hare Girl. And she's American, so it's, hey, Hare Girl, and that just became the response. And I really enjoyed the fact that somebody who was so imbued within the fairy had given me this kind of nickname that stuck with me. So oftentimes you'll see me referred to as Kate Hare Girl, and it is that lovely connection that I had with Wendy. And so hares became very important, and because hares very much represent the other realm, they are literally creatures of the moon. So they're lunar and they're feminine. And the hawthorn aspect of it is the white thorn. The hawthorn is the tree of the fairies. It's absolutely sacred to them. So to step through Hare in the hawthorn, to step through is literally me going into the fairy realm. So that's where Hare in the hawthorn came from.
Wow. We're gonna have, I realized we've been chatting for an hour and a quarter, and it's like I listen to you and then I'm like, I've got another question now. I'd love for us to catch up again another day.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Brilliant. So I'm going to say thank you to you. Oh, Kate, thank you so much. I've learned so much from you, and I've been so inspired. And I'm going to put the links into the description, how people can reach your YouTube channel and everything else. And so from me and Melton Mowbray, thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I hope you've enjoyed tonight. I hope you've been inspired. You need to get Kate's book out. My copy is going to be winging it over next week. I can't wait to read it, especially like we're neighbours. But Kate, if you'd like to say goodbye on your behalf, I'd like that.
Yeah, thank you very much for allowing me to waffle on. It's always a pleasure. I do like sharing with like-minded people. So thank you for having me on, and thank you all for listening.
Lovely. So I'm now going to technically whiz down the screen, and if we can both just smile, and because sometimes it's just okay. So good night from me.